How's it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store is wrapping up its end of the year sale. Remember, the holiday sale should be kicking off here shortly, but as the end of the year sale is concluding, we've done a ton of coverage on the sale, and I do want to give you guys the compilation video we have been doing. This is all of the deals videos we've done all in one video, so check it out for yourself, the rundown of everything. Have a look at all the deals, and stay tuned for our coverage of the holiday sale when that does kick off. How's it going, everyone? I want to go over a bunch of PlayStation Store deals as a part of the end of the year sale under the price of $4. Usually, I try to keep it to under $5, but there's a lot of good stuff under the price of $4 here as well, and well under $4 on top of that. So we'll go through all of it. Let's just get right into it. Let's start things off with Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun. We'll go through everything pretty quick since there's a ton of stuff to go over. Great tactical title done by Mimimi Games. Unfortunately, the studio is shutting down development of future titles. They also just put out Shadow Gambit, which was really well received. That game is getting some DLC, and then I think they're done creating new titles. Shadow Tactics had a great setting, great aesthetic, and did have some challenging gameplay, but a variety of different difficulty settings if you do want a more accessible experience. And then, yeah, if you like that Edo period, you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Overall, a pretty solid tactics-based game, and for this price of $4, definitely a good pickup. Hopefully, the studio, whoever, you know, still is going to be in game development, they find their footing, because they did a pretty good job with Shadow Tactics at the very least. And Shadow Gambit, I'm sure, is a game that a lot of people will check out once it's discounted a little bit. Next up, we do have a couple of Outlast titles. Might as well mention what is available. Outlast 1 is $1.99. Outlast 2 is $1.49. Outlast 2 is available through PlayStation Plus Extra. Both really well done horror games. Outlast 1 had the benefit of having that newness factor for Outlast, but both games are worthwhile for horror fans, so certainly at these price points, check them out. Speaking of horror games, Soma is $2.99 for PlayStation Plus subscribers. I often talk about it when I talk about Frictional, but I think this is their best game that they've put out. I know a lot of people love the new Amnesia game, but I thought Soma was tremendous from a psychological horror game standpoint. It's just incredibly well developed from an atmosphere standpoint. It's excellent, just awesome game. It is on the shorter side, of course. It's kind of what you expect out of a Frictional title, but yeah, $2.99, definitely a good price there. Evil Within 1, might as well mention a bunch of horror games. 85% off for $2.99. Obviously, this does have more of an emphasis on its action gameplay than, let's say, Outlast or Soma. A pretty well-done game in its own right. Solid narrative and a pretty decent game at this price point. Would recommend you to check out Evil Within 2 as well. Next up, we have Trine Enhanced Edition, which is down to $3.74. Trine is a game that I feel like everybody should at least check out. Like, it's been a long-running franchise, and the earlier Trine games were really, really well-received. Puzzle platforming, pretty well done games as far as fantasy platformers go, and a very good price that we have with Trine Enchanted Edition. Next up, we have Nexomon, 60% off for $3.99. Look, we have a lot of these Pokemon clones that do come out. Nexomon has seemingly garnered a pretty solid core fan base, and we're getting another Nexomon title here in the future that'll be a much bigger budget title. Catch, Evolve, and collect over 300 unique Nexomon. Assemble the ultimate Nexomon team to save your friends and save the world. Clash against legendary champions and become a hero in this epic journey. You're never gonna get Pokemon on PlayStation, but you know, you will have titles like Nexomon. Obviously, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is available as well, but for $3.99 a title to check out. Next up, we have Magica 2, which is 80% off for $2.99. Often talk up Magica 2 from the standpoint of if you want a over-the-top, chaotic, cooperative game, Magica 2 is such a great option. It is just a great time with friends. I wouldn't really recommend Magica solo. I mean, I'm sure you can have a decent time with it, but with Magica, I feel like the fun is had when you do play this game cooperatively, and it's just a ton of fun. You don't take it too seriously, but for the time you spend with it, I feel like you're gonna have a really good time. So $2.99 on that. Panzer Dragoon the remake is 90% off for $2.49. This is a remake that isn't beloved by a lot of people. Now, obviously, I don't have that nostalgic attachment towards Panzer Dragoon, but that was a game that was beloved by many as a Sega Saturn classic. The Sega Saturn was kind of one of those unsung consoles, but Panzer Dragoon was a game you heard about all the time, and it had this very, very high price point if you wanted the original Sega Saturn version. This remake is kind of thrown together, but guess what? It's $2.49. It's readily available on a lot of major platforms, so from that standpoint, at this price point, I think it's a pretty good pickup. Next up, we have The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing 3, $1.49 on this. Very much an action dungeon crawling Diablo-style game, but an action RPG set in a gothic noir Europe, and you know what to expect out of these action dungeon crawlers like this, but if you're looking for that style of experience, $1.49 seems like a good price to me. Next up, Mirror's Edge Catalyst, 90% off for $1.99. Often talk up Mirror's Edge Catalyst, just on the basis that, yes, the game had a lot of hype, especially from those that loved Mirror's Edge in 2008. Catalyst still offered a game that I thought was fairly decent. Was it $60 decent? Maybe not, but for $1.99, literally 1/30th of the initial price point when it came out back in 2015 or 2016, I think it's a pretty good pickup, and I think the visuals hold up really, really well. Like, graphically, it's still a pretty impressive game, and a lot of the parkour elements are still pretty good. Catalyst kind of had the issue where I feel like the original Mirror's Edge, its strength was leaning on its linear focus. I feel like Catalyst kind of faltered in trying to open it up a little bit, but overall, for $1.99, I still think this is a great, great deal, and for the quality of game you're getting, sure, it's not blowaway, it's not a game that'll ever set up another Mirror's Edge title, at least I don't think so, but, you know, for this own experience, I think $1.99 is pretty good, and you don't need to play Mirror's Edge 08 to play this. The Mirror's Edge 08 is kind of hard to play on PlayStation. I mean, there's no real way to play it unless you dig up your PS3, so a little bit of a bummer there, but nonetheless, $1.99 for that is great. Dragon's Crown Pro, 80% off for $3.99. This is available on PlayStation Plus Premium, not Extra, for whatever reason. I think it's because it's a PS3 title that was upgraded for PS4. Great action RPG by Vanillaware. Even though I think it's Vanillaware's weakest game, I still thought it was a pretty decent title. Visually, it's great, and the gameplay is solid. Soundtrack is pretty good. You know, when you have all of those elements in a game for $3.99, it's a pretty easy recommendation. Amnesia the Collection is $2.99 for Plus subscribers. This includes Amnesia The Dark Descent, which is an iconic horror game by Frictional, and Machine for Pigs. Amnesia Machine for Pigs, that is. Machine for Pigs not as well received. But to get both titles for $2.99, $1.50 a pop, I feel like that's a no-brainer and easy recommendation there. Next up, we have Lost in Random, which is a game that somebody in the comments section recommended me to mention. It's down to $2.99, available with EA Play. A gothic fairy tale inspired action adventure where every citizen's fate is determined by the roll of a dice. Ruled by a wicked queen, the kingdom of random is divided into 6 shadowy realms where life is dictated by accursed black dice. Received pretty well as an action title. Really dark ambiance and tone attached to the game as well, but for $2.99, another one to check out. Strange Brigade Digital Deluxe Edition is $3.99. Now, interestingly enough, Strange Brigade, the Standard Edition, is $4.99, but the Digital Deluxe is $3.99, one of those wonky pricings on the PlayStation Store. Embark on an exotic journey into the danger in a rip-roaring 1930s third-person action adventure. Does have cooperative play, fast-paced action, treacherous traps, and tales of daring to do. Game was received pretty strongly, and for $4 for the Digital Deluxe Edition seems like a pretty good buy there. And then lastly, just for memes, I wanted to mention Homefront The Revolution, which is 90% off for $1.99. Now, Homefront The Revolution, while this game is pretty terrible, surprisingly, it actually has a 4-star rating on the PlayStation Store. And there's a lot of games that are well under 4 stars. The game does have a way, and you guys can look into this, that you can play Time Splitters 2, I believe it is, within the game of Homefront The Revolution. That's a big reason why a lot of people buy Homefront The Revolution, so I did want to make mention of that. Homefront The Revolution itself is not a very good game. It had a very, very tumultuous development cycle, which is pretty well documented. The game itself is one of the worst games, in my opinion, that I played on the PlayStation 4. Now, I haven't played a lot of the terrible titles on PS4, you know, some of the super lowly rated titles, but Homefront The Revolution is in the mix for one of the worst. It's unfortunate because I thought Homefront The Original was such a compelling game from a single-player standpoint that Homefront The Revolution really didn't follow up on that as strongly as it could have, but you know, sometimes those are the breaks in the gaming development world. But if you do want to play Time Splitters 2, that is available through Homefront The Revolution. But that is going to do it for me. Again, a bunch of deals under the price of $4. This end of the year sale is honestly stacked with a ton of good stuff. Links to all of these deals, as always, in the description box below. That's going to do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. How's it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store is running its end of the year sale, and we already highlighted some deals under $10. Now for some deals under $5. This sale is honestly like pretty stacked as I'm looking through it more and more, and we looked at the deals under $5, you know, obviously getting the games ready for this video. I'm like, damn, you know, this sale's got a lot of good deals and quantity as well in terms of quality, quantity and quality, I should say. So yeah, definitely check out this sale for yourself. I know some of you guys were disappointed by the Black Friday sale, but I think this sale was pretty damn good. And obviously this isn't all the deals under $5. We might do another video just like all the games that we covered in the under $10 video. That certainly wasn't all of them. So with that being said, let's get right into it, and let's start things off with quite possibly the best deal I've seen thus far, and that is the Shadow Warrior Collection. 90% off for $4.99. This gets you Shadow Warrior 1 and 2, and both games I think are super stylish, fast-paced action titles. These games aren't going to compel you that much from a narrative standpoint, but in terms of gameplay, in terms of just being a fun action titles, first-person action games, these games are pretty damn good and very, very enjoyable. If you kind of just want to mentally check out sometimes and, you know, enjoy a no-nonsense action game, Shadow Warrior is going to give you that. At the same time, it can get fairly challenging, but $4.99, I think this is a great price and definitely would give it a recommendation. To get both games at this price, I mean, that's ridiculous. Shadow Warrior 2 is definitely the better game, but Shadow Warrior 1, even though it's like over a decade old at this point, which is wild to think about, still a pretty good game in its own right as well. Next up, we have Resident Evil 5, 75% off for $4.99. Now, obviously, this game is probably going to get a remake. I would imagine that the remake for this game is going to be out in like 2026 though, so like, I don't know how long you guys want to wait to play RE5. Now, RE5 is a game that I thought was really good. It was a game that I really enjoyed when it initially came out. Obviously, like, back in the day, I remember people just being infuriated with the AI. Bear in mind, I'm like 12 years old at this point when RE5 comes out, and people are just raging online about the AI in this game, and rightfully so. The AI was trash, but it was just funny to hear people rage as, like, a youngster just going online and people just crapping on this game about the AI. But, obviously, if you want the best experience out of Resident Evil 5, you should play the game with co-op. Like, that is definitely how this game was designed for. The game itself was pretty solid, definitely went even more in an action-heavy route, you know, for Resident Evil, but it worked. And in the era that it came out, the peak of the 360 and the PlayStation 3 era, like, you can see why they went that direction, and RE5 was generally a pretty well-received game outside of the trash AI, but $4.99, good price on that. Next up, we got Mad Max, 75% off for $4.99, a game that I often recommend. This game came out on September 1st, 2015, had the unfortunate fate of being released on the same day as one Metal Gear Solid 5, and think of what you want on about MGS5. We talk about, you know, February being a stacked month for game releases and gaming. You know, there's certain games that are gonna get killed by competition. Mad Max coming out on the same day as MGS5, bro, that's a way to send your game out to slaughter. In the case of Mad Max, it was actually received decently well enough. I thought the game was really good from a combat standpoint. It performed really well, and the story got pretty interesting by the end. Now, we'll never get a sequel for this game, which is kind of a bummer. But what can you do? That's kind of gaming as a whole. But for $5, I think Mad Max is quite a good deal. Definitely would give that a shout. Next up, we got Dragon Age Inquisition Deluxe Edition, 80% off for $3.99. Now, I remember when this game came out in the fall of 2014, and in my eyes, this was like one of the first truly great PlayStation 4 RPGs. Now, it was a cross-gen release. It was actually out on the PS3 and 360. A lot of people forget about that. And then, like, right after this game came out, like 4 months later, Witcher 3 came out, or 6 months later, Witcher 3 came out, and, like, Witcher 3 obviously took that throne. But Dragon Age Inquisition was a really well-made RPG, and in my eyes as well, it's BioWare's last truly great game. I mean, does that say a lot? They put out Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda since then. Doesn't say much, but Dragon Age Inquisition was a well-designed game, a lot of content. Visually, I feel like it still holds up really well. You know, 9 years later, I think this game looks really good, and for $4 with all the content that you're getting, I think this is a pretty good pickup. Next up, we got Little Nightmares, 75% off for $4.99. I always try to go to bat for this game. I feel like in an era where new IPs, it's hard to resonate, especially smaller scale new IPs, Tarsier Studios somehow dropped Little Nightmares, and somehow this game has just really clicked. I'm not saying it's a worldwide phenomenon as a horror title, but it's a well-made game. Its atmosphere is great, and I always say that's the most important part about a horror game. And, I mean, we got Little Nightmares 2. That game was really good, and Little Nightmares 3 is in development as well. It's not a game I would pay 20 bucks for, but if you're looking for a moody horror game, great atmosphere, gameplay's pretty decent, like $4.99 for this is a really solid shout, so definitely check that out. Next up, another horror title, Evil Within, 85% off for $2.99. Really good price on Tango Gameworks' Evil Within. I thought Evil Within 2 was the stronger game. Some people swear by Evil Within 1. I think both games are pretty good. Another really good horror game, more actiony, of course, than a Little Nightmares, but atmosphere-wise here is really good, and the narrative is decent. I wouldn't say it's like blow away, but I would say it's compelling enough to worthwhile, to keep you engaged and think it's worthwhile through the entirety of the playthrough. And $3, I mean, that's so cheap that I would highly recommend it. It is available on Plus Extra, but again, for that price point, really solid. Next up, Burnout Paradise Remastered, 75% off for $4.99. This seems to be one of those games I always recommend. It came out back in January of 2008, so legitimately, it's gonna be 16 years old soon, and I remember, like, picking this game up right around when it came out, and I loved this game as an arcade racer. I thought the soundtrack was great. Now, when it comes to, like, licensed music, and music that a 2008 game is gonna have, like, it's gonna be a little bit subjective, but when you got songs like Kill Switch Engage's My Curse, like, bro, that's gonna be right up my alley. And everybody talking about Dragon's Dogma 2, let me give you guys a factoid. I've mentioned this from time to time when I talk about Burnout Paradise. So, Dragon's Dogma 1 had a great song, a great theme song. I forget the name of it, but it was awesome. It played in, like, the intro. It was done by a band called Biz, I guess is how they're pronounced. They have a song in Burnout Paradise Remastered as well, and it's awesome. That song is great, and I believe it's called Friction is the song in Burnout Paradise. It's fantastic. So there's your random factoid, and I feel like that was relevant to say since Dogma 2 getting a lot of attention right now. But yeah, Burnout Paradise Remastered as its own game, pretty solid. As in, you know, as an open world racer, there's a lot of open world racers these days, and Burnout Paradise obviously doesn't hold a candle to some of the more newer ones. Forza Horizon and whatnot, it shows its age for sure, but it's still a fun time, and I like the soundtrack, and the gameplay is pretty good. Has some dated elements, but that's what you're gonna get with a 16-year-old arcade racer. Next up, we have Castlevania Requiem, Symphony of the Night, and Rondo of Blood. $2.99 on this. Symphony of the Night is one of the most iconic games of all time. Many consider it to be one of the greatest PlayStation 1 games ever released. Rondo of Blood is pretty decent as well. I believe Rondo of Blood came stateside for the first time with the Dracula X Chronicles on PSP. So it was kind of like you know, one of those hidden Castlevania titles. But Symphony of the Night, obviously an iconic classic, and if you haven't played it, I feel like it's one of those games that is talked about so much that you should go back and play it just to experience, you know, one of those games that was defining for its era. $2.99 with PlayStation Plus, really good deal. $3.99 without. Next up, we have Soma, 85% off for $4.49 without plus, $2.99 with plus. That $2.99 plus price tag is a steal. I love Soma. I played it right when it came out back in 2015, and I thought it was an excellent horror game. In my opinion, Frictional's best title. I know a lot of people love Amnesia the Bunker as well, but Soma for me was just such a great psychological horror game that really embodied a lot of the elements of being a horror game, not making you overpowered and really, you know, attacking the psyche. I feel like they did a really good job with that. And this underwater remote research facility, just fantastic setting, fantastic ambiance to the game, sound design, all of those elements are done so well. It is a super short game, keep that in mind. Like, it's not gonna, you know, you're gonna complete it within a weekend at most, but it's a really solid experience the whole way through, and it's one of those games that you might go back to every couple of years or whatnot. Lastly, I do want to give a shout to Super Meat Boy, $3.74 if you are a non-plus subscriber, $2.99 with your plus subscription. Super Meat Boy is a classic as well. It is one of those games that will enrage a lot of people, damn near have you break a controller and whatnot, but it's an incredibly addicting experience, and I would highly recommend you to at least give it a shot, even though I was damn near breaking my controller at several times. It's a game that I couldn't put down for a while, and as a precision platformer, I think it's a pretty well done game. Check it out at this price point. Again, not much to lose, and a game that can get pretty addicting, and it's always a fun game if you have like a crowd of people surrounded, not as a co-op experience or anything like that, but just having everybody, you know, pass around the controller and rage together. It's a good time, so check it out. But that'll do it for me. Again, a lot of great deals as a part of this sale across the board. I'll definitely do more coverage of it. We'll get to some more expensive games as well, but it seems like you guys like the cheaper options first, so that's why there's a lot of retread, guys. We always do the under 10, under 5, and those games kind of stay what they are. What do you want me to do? Just pull new games that, you know, I'm trying to keep up with the games that are coming out regularly, and, you know, trying to go back and hit the backlog with a lot of older titles. It's difficult to do, so I hope you guys cut me some slack. I get it. It can get a little repetitive. My apologies. I'm trying to do what I can, but, yeah, that'll do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. How's it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store is running its end of the year sale, a gargantuan sale that most people think is better than the Black Friday sale. And remember that this isn't even the biggest sale left for the year. The holiday sale generally is pretty stacked. We'll see following up on the end of the year sale if that's going to be as stacked as it was in previous years, but we got games under $10. We already uploaded a video of deals under $10, but now it's time to do another one because there's so much stuff. And honestly speaking, I could probably do a third video, but let's get right into this one. We've got XCOM 2 The Collection, 90% off for $9.99. XCOM 2 is a game that I often recommend, and I always recommend you guys to get this version of the game if possible. You know, sometimes we do the under $5 videos, and the collection is never under $5, but this gets you the base game as well as XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, which does extend the experience quite a bit. Now, keep in mind, this game does have some technical issues and performance issues. It's not like it got a native PS5 upgrade or anything like that. The game came out back in 2016. 2K ain't gonna go back and dig this game up for a proper upgrade, so what can you do? But it's a really rewarding tactics title. Can get pretty challenging, but very enjoyable as well. As I've mentioned before in previous videos as well, I'm not huge into tactics-based games, but XCOM is one that I enjoyed. I enjoyed Enemy Unknown, and then obviously XCOM 2 was a game right up my alley after that. Next up, we have Ratchet & Clank 2016, 50% off for $9.99. Obviously, at this point, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is beloved, I would say. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but I think most people enjoyed Rift Apart. Like, the main criticism with that game, and Ratchet in general, you can always make the criticism, is that it's a top-tier price title, and it is a fairly short game. Now, Ratchet 2016 was like a retelling of the first experience, and this was a budget title at $40 initially. Rift Apart, obviously, at $70. Well, now, 2016's at $9.99. Very much worth a playthrough. Obviously, it's not the technical experience, let's say, that Rift Apart is. Like, Rift Apart was a technical showcase for the PS5. 2016 was not a technical showcase for the PS4. It's a good-looking game, don't get it twisted, but you know, keep your expectations in line as far as that's concerned, but still has all the zaniness and the wackiness that you know out of Ratchet & Clank as far as weapons and whatnot. I wish we could get the Ratchet HD collection on PlayStation 4 so we could play Going Commando and Up Your Arsenal, and, you know, it would be great to get Deadlocked on PlayStation 4 and 5 as well, but maybe we'll get that at some point, given that I think Ratchet & Clank is gonna go MIA for a while. Be a great way to at least appease Ratchet fans by doing stuff like the Future Collection or, you know, the original PS2 titles. Just throwing out an idea, Sony. I know you guys like to get, you know, a return on your investment and get games out there that don't cost a gargantuan amount to develop. Well, a Ratchet Future Collection would be exactly that, and I think it would do fairly well, but we'll see if that comes to fruition. For now, Ratchet 2016, $9.99 on that is great. Next up, Vampire, 80% off for $7.99. This is a game done by Don't Nod Entertainment, the same studio that brought you the Life is Strange title, so expect a compelling narrative, good voice acting out of this game. The gameplay is where Vampire does fall a little bit short. They did update the game to add like an easier mode, so if you just want to focus on, you know, the quality elements like the atmosphere, the storytelling, I think that might be a good route to go. But for $8, this is a really good deal, and honestly, I was like pretty surprised by how much I enjoyed this game. Like, I remember when I first saw Vampire, like a trailer for it, I was like, this game's gonna be trash, and it wasn't trash. Like, yo, is it the greatest game ever? No. Not by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought the atmosphere, the story, even though the ending was kind of, you know, they kind of fumbled there, but overall, I thought the game was pretty decent at $8. Decent pickup. Next up, we have Wipeout the Omega Collection, which is on sale for $7.99. You know, Wipeout's a franchise that, in my opinion, has been done dirty by Sony. I feel like if they released a new Wipeout game to today's PlayStation audience, the game would do really well. Never know if that'll come to fruition, but Wipeout Omega Collection is awesome. A great futuristic arcade racer, great presentation, soundtrack's pretty good, and gameplay is obviously excellent. It's also got a great PSVR component that doesn't get, like, enough shine. Obviously, like, if you want to play VR1 games, you need to connect the VR1 headset, so that's kind of whack, but, Yeah, it's great, and I would strongly recommend it, even without VR, and most people are going to play it without VR. It's a worthwhile game to have in your library. Next up, we have Tales of Zestria, which is 90% off for $5.99. Widely considered to be, by most people, one of, if not the weakest Tales of game. Like, there's stuff like Dawn of the New World, Symphonia Dawn of the New World, which probably is just as weak, maybe even weaker, but in saying that it's the weakest Tales of game doesn't mean that it's a bad game, because the Tales of games are immensely consistent as far as quality level. Like, I would put Abyss and Arise and Vesperia among the upper echelon of Tales of titles, but they're all, like, fairly good, and Zestria was still a fairly good game. It just made some very jarring narrative decisions, and honestly, as far as the cast goes, Zestria has one of the weakest casts, and I feel like Tales of does a pretty good job in having a strong cast. Like, look at the cast of Vesperia and Abyss. Like, they completely crap on the cast of Zestria, but Zestria is still a decent game all around, and for $5.99, if you've played the other games and you enjoyed them, it's still a worthwhile pickup. Next up, we have Wolfenstein 2, the New Colossus Digital Deluxe Edition, 85% off for $9. This includes the base Wolfenstein 2 game, as well as all of the DLC packs. Wolfenstein is kind of a wacky, zany title as well, but as far as first-person shooters go and single-player first-person shooters, I thought Wolfenstein New Order was damn good, and I thought New Colossus built upon that and was an even better game. It's also got some length to it in comparison to other single-player FPS campaigns and whatnot. Like, yo, compared to a COD campaign, you might as well call this an open-world game. You know, Wolfenstein 2 is a damn good game. Story's pretty good, and I would recommend you to play New Order. There is like a recap video that's included, so, you know, that's a thing, but you guys know how those recap videos are. But yeah, $9 for the deluxe edition, quite good there. Next up, we have Frostpunk Complete Collection, 80% off for $8.99. This is a fantastic deal, given that it gets you Frostpunk, the base game, as well as the DLC content. Now, Frostpunk is a game done by 11-Bit Studios. 11-Bit Studios does games that really, you know, are emotionally incredibly gripping. They're darker games in terms of tonality, and while Frostpunk from a gameplay style definitely is more suited for keyboard and mouse and that PC audience, I feel like it's such a compelling city builder title and city management game that everybody should try it out. It has a decent transition to console controls as well, so that's pretty good, but just the style of the game and having a city builder and this dark ambiance, I think is incredibly unique, and from that standpoint, Frostpunk is a worthwhile playthrough. The base game is $6. You pay $3 more and you get the season pass. I think that's worth it, so I would definitely give that a shout. Next up, we have The Ascent, 70% off for $8.99. I initially played this back on Xbox Game Pass when it dropped. It had like a year delayed release on PlayStation 4 and 5. Pretty good top-down cyberpunk isometric RPG. Like, I enjoyed it for what it was. Customizability, gameplay's pretty solid. Don't expect anything blow away, but if you're into the style of game that Ascent is, you'll probably enjoy it. It does have multiplayer as well, so if you do want to play it with a couple friends, that is an option, and $8.99 I feel like is a pretty good price. Is available on Plus Extra. Next up, also available on Plus Extra, we have Code Vein, 85% off for $8.99. This will often be called anime Dark Souls, and I can definitely see that comparison. It's a game that definitely has its issues in terms of its narrative, and this was actually done, I believe, by the same studio that did Scarlet Nexus, and Scarlet Nexus crushes it from a narrative standpoint. Code Vein, not as strong, but I feel like the world design, the character design, all of those elements are rather strong, and if you like the anime aesthetic, if you're into Souls-like titles, this is a game you should play. $60 was pricey, but at $8.99, pretty damn good deal there. Next up, we have the Castlevania Advance Collection, $7.99 if you're a Plus subscriber, $8.99 without your Plus subscription. This includes Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, Aria of Sorrow, and the Dracula X. These are games that are classics in the Castlevania universe, and a lot of people love them. Obviously, these are games that, it's called the Advance Collection, so, like, keep your expectations in line from the technical standpoint, but that's what I always say about the collection with Castlevania Symphony of the Night. You know, these are classic titles, but classics for a reason. For this price point, $7.99 with all the content you're getting, pretty good pickup. Shadow of the Colossus, also a classic, but it's 50% off for $9.99, and this is the ground-up remake done by Bluepoint Games. This was Bluepoint's first, like, real remake, because before this, they were doing a lot of HD remasters, like the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection. SOTC is a legit ground-up remake, and it is a fantastic remake. Like, even on the PS4, it is a technical juggernaut, and still, you know, kind of pushes that console to the the Limit. If you guys don't know, SOTC on PS2, phenomenal game. Really pushed the hardware of that game to its absolute knees, and SOTC on PS4 is great as well. Incredibly atmospheric. The immersion level in this game is just so strong. Obviously, the game is centered around fighting these behemoth colossi, or colossuses. I don't know exactly what is the term for that, but you get the idea. They all have their unique style in terms of how you beat them, and it's done very well. From a gameplay standpoint, it's incredibly unique. But Shadow of the Colossus is a great game, and I think for most people, it would probably be the best game Team Eco's put out. I mean, Eco was incredibly unique for its time and really good for its time, but that game, I don't know how many people are going back and talking about that game or even playing it. And Last Guardian, obviously, tumultuous development cycle attached to that game, but still a unique game, just a lot of issues attached to it. Lastly, we have Little Nightmares 2, 67% off for $9.89. Often talk about Little Nightmares. Great survival horror, side-scrolling platforming game, great atmosphere. Go play the first one, which I do believe is on sale right now. But they have a Little Nightmares 1 and 2 bundle for $15, which includes the base game of the first one, the DLC for the first one, and Little Nightmares 2, which is a damn good deal if you don't have the first game either. But Little Nightmares 2, worthwhile to check out, and Little Nightmares 3 is in development, so that's pretty exciting as well. But that is going to do it for me. Again, the end of the year sale is absolutely stacked with great stuff. Go check it out for yourself. Links to all of these deals in the description box down below. As always, thank you for watching. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below, and goodbye. How's it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store has kicked off its colossal end-of-the-year sale, and I saw a lot of you guys in the comment section. Somebody, I think it was a top comment, said that this sale beats out the Black Friday sale, and honestly, looking through it, probably in agreement with that. This sale's pretty kick-ass, all things considered. Like, there's a lot of good stuff on sale. This is under $10 stuff, like the $5 to $10 range. We'll do under $5 as well, but there's a ton of stuff under $10, so obviously, it's a retread of a lot of the stuff that I've covered before, but there's always one or two of you that need these games, and, you know, worthwhile to check them out at these price points. So let's get right into it. Let's start things off with Alan Wake Remastered, which is down to $9.89. I was pretty vocal about the fact that Alan Wake 2 really didn't do it for me like it did for a lot of other people. Like, when I played Alan Wake 2, I could objectively assess it's a really well-made game from a visual, aesthetic, and sound design standpoint, but for some reason, couldn't really get into it. I mean, for some reason, when I say that, I do have my reasons, but let's not get into that right now. Alan Wake 1 is still a game that I really enjoyed, and if Alan Wake 2 was available for like sub $20, I would say buy that all day long, and Alan Wake 1, sub $10, buy this all day long. I still really like Alan Wake 1. The gameplay certainly shows its age, but I think aesthetically, atmosphere-wise, and as far as level design, I think it does a really good job with that. Level design is actually one of my main issues with Alan Wake 2, but nevertheless, $9.89 with Alan Wake Remastered I think is a great deal. You also get the DLC here, so that's pretty good. Next up, Borderlands Game of the Year Edition, 67% off for $9.89. Now, a lot of you guys probably have Borderlands the Handsome Collection, and they often put on sale Borderlands the Saga or whatever. That includes the Handsome Collection and Game of the Year Edition, but here, you have just Borderlands Game of the Year Edition on sale solo, so this is probably something for a lot of you guys to pick up. This is Borderlands 1, refined with some of the Borderlands 2 elements, and I loved Borderlands 1. Man, I played this game back in 2009, and how wild is that to think about, that this game came out over 14 years ago. I think it was October 9th. Was it October 9th or October 2nd of 2009? It was in that early October. Actually, I think it was October 13th. It was one of those dates, but yes, I remember being super excited for this game and being blown away by it when I initially played it in 09. Loved it. Worthwhile to go back and play it again for a lot of you guys. If you're a little bit younger, you probably never even played Borderlands 1. Well, there's reason to go back and play it. And I'm always of the mindset, Borderlands, while it does have a huge emphasis on its cooperative play, I think it's perfectly enjoyable solo as well. Next up, we have DMC Devil May Cry, 75% off for $9.99. Now, this game was actually developed by One Ninja Theory, who these days most known for the Hellblade title, working on Hellblade 2, owned by Microsoft now as well. DMC Devil May Cry is a really well-made action title. The issue with this game is that, you know, hardcore Devil May Cry fans were not really happy with a lot of the changes made. Now, you go into this game these days not being a Devil May Cry fan, because this game is totally different. You got DMC5. If you want Devil May Cry, you play that. If you want a good action game, which, let's not get it twisted, DMC5, I would say is a better game than this, but I thought Ninja Theory did a really good job with this game, and as an action title, it's pretty well done. Visually does show its age for sure, but for this price point, definitely a good pickup. Next up, we got Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order Deluxe Edition. It is 80% off for $9.99. This game has an awesome PS5 upgrade as well. Really enjoyed Jedi Fallen Order. I did like Jedi Survivor better, which some people seem to really be on the side of liking Jedi Fallen Order better. I guess they like some of the narrative aspects and whatnot, but I did really enjoy Jedi Fallen Order as well, and really, as far as getting me more into Star Wars, now let's not get it twisted, I'm not a Star Wars super fan by any stretch of the imagination, but Jedi Fallen Order was the game that really, at least had me look into Star Wars a little bit more, and I love Jedi Fallen Order from a gameplay standpoint. Visually it was great. Love Cal as a main character as well, and seeing his progression from Fallen Order into Survivor, love that as well. I've been vocal about the fact that the map design is an absolute abomination in this game. Not the actual level design, but like the map, you know, to show you how the map is laid out. And it's terrible. It's an abomination. It's literally one of the worst aspects I've seen of a really great game that hinders a game so greatly. Maybe some of you guys think that's a stretch. I don't think that is the case with Jedi Fallen Order. They really did refine that with Jedi Survivor. And that was one of the aspects that made me enjoy Survivor a lot more. But Fallen Order is still a great game. $9.99 I think is a pretty good buy, so definitely go check that out, and especially with the PS5 version. By the way, this is the deluxe edition as well. Next up, Control Ultimate Edition, 75% off for $9.99. Gotta give Remedy their due, man. I'm mentioning a lot of Remedy titles. Loved Control. In my opinion, it is Remedy's best game, and it runs great on PlayStation 5. The Ultimate Edition includes the DLC. I think from a gameplay standpoint, the game is awesome. Atmosphere is great. Story is your, you know, it's kind of confusing, but it comes together. It's like that Remedy intricate layers of storytelling, which some people are really into, other people not so much, but $9.99 for this is great, and again, on PS5, really, really solid here. If you've never played Alan Wake or any of the Remedy games, the Control's a fine place to start playing their title, so definitely would recommend that. Next up, Chrono Cross The Radical Dreamers Edition, 50% off for $9.99. Now, this is a game that it's this upgraded release, really nothing to write home about as far as that's concerned, but the game itself is a classic JRPG that at this point, again, is going to show its age, but the story's pretty good, characters are likable, and that PS1 era of JRPGs, I mean, you're talking about a stacked roster of JRPGs from that era, and Chrono Cross definitely fits the bill as one of the, I wouldn't say one of the elite, but one of the better ones for sure, and at this price point, great pickup there. Couple of Resident Evil titles, Resident Evil 2, the remake, 75% off for $9.99, one of the best remakes of all time, done by the same team that did the RE4 remake, which, man, you can make an argument that that is the best remake of all time, but Resident Evil 2 was great as well. Now, I didn't have an affinity towards the original release of Resident Evil 2, so, you know, I didn't really have that nostalgic lens of comparing the two games. I did have that with RE4, but still really enjoyed RE2, and definitely a game I would recommend at this price point. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is 60% off for $8. I mean, this is the game that really got Resident Evil back on track after, you know, Resident Evil 6 wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't like the Resident Evil style of game that I think a lot of people wanted. Resident Evil 7 was a return to the horror atmosphere and the engrossing narrative structure of Resident Evil, and I felt like they did a really good job with that. $8 for this is great. Has a really good VR component as well, so I mean, if you do want to check it out with that way, that is an option, but obviously that's only on PS4 with VR1, which is a little bit of a bummer. Batman Arkham Collection, 90% off for $6. Like, yes, most of you guys probably have this, but there's got to be a few of you that don't, and this is just such a ridiculous deal every time I see it that it's got to get a recommendation. I mean, $6 gets you Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, the DLC for both those games, and Arkham Knight. Like, what, bro? That is crazy, especially for one of the greatest trilogies in gaming history. Like, I really don't feel that's a stretch to say that, and you know, whenever I talk about Batman Arkham, it just gets me really depressed thinking about what Rocksteady is up to these days, and I hope they do a good job with Suicide Squad, but I feel like, you know, WB's fingerprints have been all over that, and that could hinder what Rocksteady puts out in the future. It's gonna be, by the time Suicide Squad comes out, damn near 9 years since the release of Arkham Knight, and if we get some live service nonsense to celebrate that 9 years, man, that is gonna be one of the most depressing game releases quite possibly of all time, given the love that people have for Rocksteady, and potentially to see them go down this route, that's just going to be a little depressing. But we'll always have the Batman Arkham trilogy, and these games are tremendous, and even better at $6 for all of them. Next up, Last of Us Remastered, 50% off for $9.99. Now, I don't really know if this is like a super worthwhile recommendation, given that Last of Us Part 1 exists, but Last of Us Part 1 is also $40 still, which I still think is an egregious price point. Look, Last of Us 1 is one of my favorite games of all time, but Sony be Sonying with Last of Us Part 1, as far as that being 70 bucks at launch and still holding up at 40. Last of Us Remastered still looks really good. I played this, like, I want to say it was somewhere between 6 to 12 months before Part 1 came out, and Part 1 hadn't been revealed at that point, so I wanted to do a replay, and I ended up just playing Remastered. It was still a great experience then, runs well on PS5, and yeah, Last of Us 1 is an all-time classic to me. You guys know my opinions on Last of Us. I'm a broken record at it with this point, as far as my thoughts on Last of Us Part 2, but Last of Us Part 1. Like, Part 2's direction is never going to take away from the fact that Part 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. I think it's fantastic. Joel is one of the GOATs as far as video game main characters go, and the development between Joel and Ellie, I just think, is one of the best character advancements in a game that I've seen. So, yeah, $9.99, great in that regard, and yeah, Last of Us 1 really takes me back to Naughty Dog at their peak. Uncharted trilogy followed by The Last of Us Part 1, like, oh my goodness, Naughty Dog was built different in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Next up, we got Dying Light Definitive Edition, 80% off for $9.99. Dying Light's a great game. I do prefer Dying Light 1 over 2, but I did really enjoy Dying Light 2 as well. Dying Light 1 had a more contained open world, which I actually think, you know, there are good and bad things about that, but it works in the sense that today you're playing like 80 billion colossal open worlds, that Dying Light's a pretty good and sizable one to get into. The parkour gameplay is great, visuals are great, and Techland did a tremendous job of keeping this game updated for a lengthy period of time. $10 for it, no brainer. And lastly, we got Kingdom Come Deliverance, 80% off for $5.99. It's a historical RPG that I often recommend and doesn't get a lot of love. Now, performance isn't the greatest on PlayStation 4. Like, this is a game that I think most would enjoy the best on PC, but thematically the game is strong, the story is really good. Gameplay-wise, like, I think it's gonna be love or hate for a lot of people, but I thought it was engaging the whole way through. And again, as far as thematics go and the historical aspects, I think that's the strongest element of KCD, and if you're into that aspect, like the stylization of the game, then you'll probably enjoy it quite a bit. But at $5.99, great price. I do usually try to recommend the Royal Edition, but that's not on sale right now, so what can you do? But that'll do it for me. Again, the end of the year sale, bringing with it a ton of great deals, and a colossal sale here, given that the holiday sale is going to be a big one, and that'll be kicking off right after this one. So, yeah, the PlayStation Store don't be stopping these days, but that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. How's it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store is running its end of the year sale, and there's a ton of great stuff that is being discounted. Wanted to highlight some deals under $20. It seems like when I get to the under $20 threshold, I can actually mention some stuff that we don't talk about quite often. A lot of the stuff here I have mentioned every now and again, but there's definitely some good stuff under 20 bucks, and I think at this range you can definitely pick up some quality stuff. There's a lot of stuff under $20 that I thought was quite good, and we got 10 games on this list. Might do another one, and definitely will eventually get around to games that are a little bit more expensive. I just always work my way up as far as price thresholds go. But with that being said, and let's start things off with the Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, 60% off for $13.99. Now, I have my opinions about this game. Was I very much disappointed with FF15? Oh, you damn right I was, because I've been following this game, or I was following this game for a decade when it was Final Fantasy Versus 13, and you're talking about, like, when this game was revealed, I must have been like 11, 12 years old, and I was like super excited for it, and just following it for a decade. Obviously at that age your mind just goes crazy, and you're like, this is gonna be the greatest game ever, and then it gets re-revealed, it gets renamed, and you're like, oh my god, they're gonna do it, they're gonna drop the best Final Fantasy game ever, and my expectations were crazy. And then ultimately it came out, disjointed story, an abrupt ending, and that was really the issue with FF15. The story was just completely all over the place. The Royal Edition does help tie things together with the DLC content included. I would recommend you to watch Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15, but, you know, the strengths of FF15, the incredible visuals, the combat system, the open world to explore, those elements are actually really strong, and given that you're paying $14, you're going in with tempered expectations, it runs great on PlayStation 5. At this price point, I think it's a great pickup, and I would say check it out. It's just, whenever I talk about FF15, I gotta go on my diatribe, because this is a game that, you know, I was just so looking forward to. and for me, it didn't live up to my expectations, but my expectations were sky high, so take that for what you will. Next up, we got Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the Deluxe Edition, which is 77% off for $19.54. This gets you DBZ Kakarot as well as the DLC. The Season Pass is in here. Now, Season Pass 1 is in here. You don't get Season Pass 2, which Season Pass 2 dropped earlier this year and included the Bardock episode and the World Tournament episode. Season Pass 1, however, does give you some Dragon Ball Super stuff, and it gives you the alternate timeline Trunks story, you know, like Trunks and Future Gohan versus the androids and all that stuff, which is a nice episode to go through. But DBZ Kakarot itself is an awesome game. It's a great retelling of Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, it's got some, like, cut-out elements that I found were kind of jarring, but overall, the game is great, and it's got a ton of content. $19.54 for this is excellent. I wish that CyberConnect 2 and Bandai Namco, the powers that be, would give Naruto the DBZ Kakarot treatment, because after playing Storm Connections, that game is such a lazy release that, man, can we get something nicer for Naruto fans, like a Naruto Kakarot? Obviously, that doesn't make any sense, but I don't know, the Naruto Uzumaki story. Title it whatever the hell you want. Just do exactly what you did with Kakarot and do it for Naruto, and, you know, that's a license to print money, but, yeah, I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. Probably will, since ever is a long time. But next up, we got Resident Evil Village Gold Edition, 60% off for $19.99. RE Village is an awesome game, one of my top games of 2021. This includes the base game as well as the Winter's expansion, kind of, you know, tying up that story thread really nicely. Resident Evil Village also does have a VR component. If you want to play the game in VR, that's an option. But the game itself, the DLC, 20 bucks, that's a great pickup. Resident Evil is never going to be the lengthiest game in the world, but it is super replayable, so you'll probably go back and play it a couple times. Obviously, would recommend you to play Resident Evil 7 Biohazard before you play Village, but that's just my 2 cents. Next up, we got the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Anniversary Edition, 60% off for $19.99. I'm always going to be a fanboy for Skyrim. Skyrim is one of my favorite games of all time, and maybe some people don't vibe with Bethesda games as strongly as I sometimes do, but then again, I didn't love Fallout 4, and I like Starfield, but definitely didn't like it as much as Skyrim, and Skyrim is a game, maybe it's the setting, maybe it's the random dragon fights, I don't know, it just did it for me. The Anniversary Edition gives you all the DLC as well, upgraded on PlayStation 5, runs pretty well on there, and Skyrim's a game I feel like I could always go back to. I feel like most of you guys probably played it on the PlayStation 3. If you skipped out on the PS4 version, maybe picking it up on the PS5 is going to be worthwhile to revisit the game. For 20 bucks, I think it's a pretty good buy. Next up, we got Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, 60% off for $19.99. This includes Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy. Lost Legacy is a standalone expansion that's more of like a smaller experience, kind of that Miles Morales type of experience that Spider-Man had. Uncharted 4, I think, is really good. It's actually probably like my second favorite Uncharted game behind Uncharted 2, and Uncharted 4 from a visual standpoint is phenomenal. Technically speaking, this game is tremendous. I know some people were down on a lot of the story elements of the game, and yeah, some of the nonsensical twists and turns I found like to be like, alright bro, like come on now. Like some aspects I definitely understand why people were down on it, but from a gameplay standpoint, I thought it was great. The puzzles were pretty well done, and overall still a game I would strongly recommend. A little bit lengthier than the other Uncharted games, and you know, this is a franchise that has been dormant for quite a while. I feel like it's still got some legs to it. You can do a lot with Uncharted, but I do think it was a good idea that they took a break after Lost Legacy. You know, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I'm sure Uncharted will see another release at some point, probably a couple years away still, but by the end of this generation, I would hope that we get another Uncharted game, and hopefully that will come to fruition. Next up, we got Tiny Tina's Wonderlands Next Level Edition, 75% off for $17.49. Now, I've been pretty vocal that this isn't my favorite game, but this is one where I have to be kind of objective that if you do like the Borderlands style gameplay, you're gonna end up enjoying this game, and $70 was way too much, but 17 and change, okay, at that price point, Tiny Tina Wonderlands, I think is a pretty good buy. I wasn't crazy about like the board game gimmick attached to this game, and it's a fairly short game as well, definitely has some replayability and optional content and things of the sort, but at $17.50, this is a price point I can recommend the game at, even if it wasn't totally my cup of tea. It might be a case of the Borderlands style just getting away from me, but I actually just reinstalled Borderlands 1, and I'm gonna give that another playthrough, so I'll circle back with you guys if that gameplay loop is still something I enjoy, and I probably will enjoy Borderlands 1. I mean, come on, Borderlands 1 and 2 were tremendous, and Tiny Tina's is still a good game. It's just Borderlands 1 and 2 I thought were absolutely elite, and I didn't feel that way about Wonderlands, but still worthwhile to check out. Next up, we got Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, 60% off for 16 bucks. DMC5 is awesome. What a fast-paced action game with an awesome soundtrack. Yo, the only thing I need to do to sell you on DMC5 is go on YouTube, look up Devil Trigger, just listen to that song, and that's all you need for me to sell you on that game. That is legitimately all you need. The gameplay itself is great. I'm not crazy about the DMC narrative, but, you know, some people are super into that, and for $16, if you want a fast-paced action game, it doesn't get much better than DMC5. Next up, we got Death Stranding Director's Cut, 60% off for $19.99. What an expansive game Death Stranding is that I understand is absolutely not gonna be for everyone, but Death Stranding is one of those games that I really feel like pushes gaming as a medium forward, and it tries a lot of unique things. Does all of it land? No, but I think from a narrative standpoint, it is incredibly compelling. The world design is so detailed, and the director's cut does extend the experience quite a bit. I am a big fan of Norman Reedus as well. Daryl is my favorite character in The Walking Dead, so obviously I might be a little bit biased towards it, but for $19.99, Death Stranding is a great pickup, and for this version of the game, I think that's a good buy. Next up, we got the Middle-earth Shadow Bundle. This includes Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor as well as Shadow of War. The definitive editions on both of those, solid open-world action titles, really well made. I wish they would get full-on PlayStation 5 upgrades, but as I often say, we can't always have nice things, and for what you're getting here, $10.49, great pickup there. Next up, we got Digimon Survive, 67% off for $19.79. Now, this game is absolutely not gonna be for everyone. I think a lot of people bought this game because it was the Digimon IP. A lot of people are nostalgic towards that. However, this game is primarily a visual novel, and I feel like a lot of people found that to be jarring, but it does have a tactics gameplay style to it, but that is a small fraction of the game. Maybe 25 to 30% of the game is that, and the rest is really more of a visual novel, some exploration elements in terms of, you know, point and click and things of that, nothing crazy, but the story is incredibly compelling, and I think for sub 20 bucks, it's a good buy. Just know what you're getting yourself into, and then you'll probably enjoy the game quite a bit. And then lastly, do want to give a shout to Chained Echoes. It is 25% off for $18.74. With PlayStation Plus, you can get it for $17.49. If you are a fan of throwback JRPGs, it does not get much better than Chained Echoes. The writing in this game is pretty good, the story is good, characters are pretty good, battle system is enjoyable. It's just a really well done throwback JRPG that knows the audience it's going after and then excels at that. Visual style, it's gonna be something a lot of people dig, some people not so much, but if you know what you're getting yourself into with Chained Echoes as well, you're gonna really enjoy the game, and if you're a fan of JRPGs, kind of a must play. A lot of people thought it was a game that should have been up for Game of the Year awards and things like that. The issue is it came out in December of last year. At that point, a lot of people are finalizing their nominees and whatnot, so it is what it is, but excellent game, $17.49, great pickup. But that'll do it for me. Again, a ton of great deals available on the PlayStation Store, sub 20 bucks. Check them out in the description box below. I'll have the links listed there. As always, thank you for watching. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below, and goodbye. How's it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store is wrapping up its end of the year sale as we move on into the holiday sale that will be kicking off in a little over a week from now. A lot of good deals available. We've done a ton of videos, so go check those out if you haven't. This is just 10 more deals that are available, and most of these are well over $20, but some of them are under, so let's get right into it, and let's start off with one that's under 20 bucks. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is 70% off for $17.99. This is available with PlayStation Plus Extra. Honestly, one of the best games you can play on Plus Extra if you do have that subscription service, which I know a lot of you guys are unsubscribing to. 13 Sentinels is a terrific game done by Vanillaware, the same guys that did Muramasa the Demon's Blade, Odin Sphere, and Dragon's Crown, and they're currently working on a brand new tactical RPG, Unicorn Overlord, I believe it's called. But 13 Sentinels was a tremendous game, once again employing that great Vanillaware art style, has an awesome soundtrack, and the story is great. Now, it is one of those, like, you know, time travel stories, which those stories can be absolute train wrecks, and one misstep can make those stories completely nonsensical, but 13 Sentinels does a great job while keeping an air of mystery for a large portion of the game, also unraveling at a steady pace to keep you intrigued and engaged in the game. I just thought it was really, really well done. Wasn't crazy about the tactical combat system that was in the game, but overall still a fantastic game, and 70% off for $18 I think is a great pickup, so definitely go check that out. Highly recommended and a super underrated game. Next up we have Detroit Become Human Digital Deluxe Edition, which is 50% off for $14.99. Detroit is a game that I often recommend, done by Quantic Dreams. If you're familiar with their games, they very much do more narrative heavy decision based games, and Detroit is certainly that futuristic world that I think a lot of people in today's world can get pretty into. And with the Digital Deluxe Edition, you also get Heavy Rain on PlayStation 4 and some in-game items that, you know, nothing to write home about as far as the in-game items. Digital art book, Digital Deluxe soundtrack, and stuff like that, some avatars, and dynamic themes for the two of you that are still on PS4. But yeah, Detroit's great, and you get Heavy Rain with this bundle as well. That's just kind of like stealthily added in there, and Heavy Rain is quite good as well. Shows its age, but I remember when Heavy Rain initially came out back in 2010, it was really well received, and again, shows its age now, but still a worthwhile playthrough. Next up, we have Bayonetta and Vanquish 10th Anniversary Bundle, 75% off for $9.99. Two awesome fast-paced action games done by Platinum Games. I love Vanquish. I think the game is super underrated. The issue with Vanquish was, you know, coming out back in October of 2010, I think it was, you know, it being a 5 to 6 hour game for $60, yeah, that was gonna be an issue, but man, if you're talking about over-the-top action games, you're getting exactly that with Vanquish. Bayonetta, obviously a lot more well-known with Nintendo publishing a bunch of sequels that'll never come out on PlayStation, but is what it is. You got the first game in this bundle and $9.99 for both these games. Quite good, $5 a pop, and definitely when you're spending $5 on a game like Vanquish instead of $60, you're gonna be a lot more satisfied with the experience that it offers. Next up, we have Lost Judgment, 70% off for $18, the follow-up to Judgment. Lost Judgment is generally considered to be a lot better from a gameplay and content standpoint. However, narratively, I think Judgment is the stronger game that most people gravitate towards. Judgment is also a very, like, contained story where it tells a very satisfying story from start to finish, so I would recommend you to play Judgment first, of course, but if you want more of that content, Lost Judgment is a pretty good one. I'm always of the mindset that if you want to get into the RGG games, I know a lot of people recommend Yakuza 0 as a good starting point, but the fact is, Judgment was built ground up for the PS4, so technically speaking, it's a little bit better. It's got English voice acting, and I think it's pretty damn good as far as the English voice acting is concerned, and I know some people are like, blasphemy, you can't play the RGG games with English voice acting, but I know a lot of people would just prefer that. $18 for Lost Judgment, great deal. Also available on Plus Extra, so you can play it on that. Next up, we got Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 and 2.5 Remix. These games, unfortunately, got a price increase after, I want to say, the Epic Games Store, the Xbox versions came out. They used to go for a lot cheaper, and then, you know, Square Enix decided to up the price, I guess, to have parity with the other versions' releases for whatever reason, but this gets you Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts Ray Chain of Memories, you get Birth by Sleep, Kingdom Hearts 2, and some other content. I think the Dream Drop Distance cutscenes are in there as well. It's a ton of content for your money. Obviously, like, Kingdom Hearts 1 shows its age. I think Kingdom Hearts 2 is still damn good. Birth by Sleep is really good as well. All the games are really good, and most people want to play the Kingdom Hearts titles, like, sequentially. You know, it is a hard story to follow at times, but still, I think it's incredibly worthwhile. Soundtrack is incredible, gameplay is solid, and for the most part, the story is engaging. Kind of gets wild at times, but I would still say it's a good pickup for what you're paying. Next up, we got Valkyrie Elysium, 60% off for $24. If this was a little bit cheaper, I would say slam dunk pickup, but $24 is still decent. This is a game that you have to keep your expectations in line as far as what to expect for a Square Enix JRPG. This is definitely one of their, you know, second-tier JRPGs. It's not a Final Fantasy or anything like that, but it's not some quality action combat that I think is well done. The visuals aren't that great. The soundtrack is pretty good, and the story is kind of nonsensical. So, you know, I still think there's a lot to like, and for $24, it's not a bad pickup. So I would say at this price point, it's worthwhile to check it out. Next up, Sonic Frontier, 60% off for $24. I am a big fan of recommending this game. As you guys may have noticed, I thought this game was blowaway, and especially from a Sonic fan's point of view, like, Sonic games are generally pretty mid, and Sonic Frontiers was well above that. Did it have its issues? Sure. I think from a gameplay standpoint, there's a lot more that Sega can do to develop on this, but they laid the foundation for what Sonic could become in the future, and I think if they do a sequel to this, you know, the sky's the limit as far as that's concerned. Soundtrack is absolutely excellent. Good bit of content for $24. Definitely a good pickup there. Next up, we got Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, $29.39 on this. Really one of the first PlayStation 5 exclusives that showcased what the console could do from a technical standpoint with, you know, traveling between the rifts and whatnot. It's a really good game. The issue was $70 for a game that you can platinum in 12 to 13 hours. Like, yeah, that's gonna be a little bit of a hard sell for a lot of people, but I still think overall, Ratchet Rift Apart was a really, really well done game. You know, a bit of replayability. I thought the inclusion of Rivet added a nice layer to Ratchet & Clank as a whole. Obviously, I don't think we're going to get a lot more Ratchet content going forward. Insomniac is busy with Spider-Man, with Marvel's Wolverine, and, you know, unless they give Ratchet & Clank to a different studio, like, I don't know how Insomniac could juggle Ratchet as well. At the very least, can we get a Ratchet Future Collection? Like, those games are just in PS3 purgatory right now, and it'd be nice if we could play those, but nonetheless, Rift Apart definitely worthwhile. At this price point, I think it's pretty good. It is on Plus Extra, of course. Next up, Diablo 3 Eternal Collection, 67% off for $19.79. It's Diablo, like, there's not much more to say outside of that, but this gives you a lot of content. Diablo 4 certainly had its mixed reception, but Diablo 3 Eternal Collection gets you Diablo 3 and Reaper of Souls. That's a ton of content, ton of replayability, and if you just want that action dungeon crawling experience at a cheaper price point, I mean, sub $20 for Diablo 3 is pretty good. And lastly, we have Persona 5 Royal, 50% off for $29.99 for the PS5 version. This also includes all of the DLC that was in the Ultimate Edition. $30 is pricey for a game that came out in early 2020, but you know what? Persona 5 is generally considered to be one of the best video games ever created. I don't even have to say best JRPG. Like, a lot of people consider it to be the best JRPG ever made, but legitimately, if you look at its Metacritic score, the general consensus is that this is one of the best made games ever, and for a good reason. Excellent soundtrack, great combat system, good story, great cast of characters. Royal obviously extends the experience quite a bit with its expansion, and yeah, for $30, you're talking about getting well over 100 hours of gameplay. Easy recommendation there. If you are a Plus Premium subscriber, you can get a 4-hour game trial, which 4 hours is a lot better than a lot of other games, but that's still, for Persona 5, just scratching the surface. But that'll be doing it for me. Again, the end of the year sale is quite good with a lot of good stuff. Links to all of the deals will be in the description box below, so check that out, and sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.